Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Sefer Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined by Aryeh Ganz, who is the mechaber editor of the collector of the new two-volume Likut Sefer Al Hatorah called Arzei HaLevanon, and by Shimon Szimonowitz, who is the Reish Machon, the head of Machon Aleh Zayis, who's been on the podcast a number of times before. And we'll be discussing this new two-volume Sefer that they published called Arzei HaLevanon. So thank you both for joining me. And we'll start off with Rabbi Ganz, because you haven't been on the podcast before. Rabbi Shimon has. So Rabbi Ganz, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. So I'm from Lakewood. I was born in the waning years of the 20th century. I learned in Stanford Yeshiva, and my father is one of the big Talmidei Chacham in Yeshiva in Lakewood. He came to Lakewood in 1967 and still going strong. Now I live in Eretz Yisrael with my wife and children, and I'm zeichet to sit and learn in Yerushalayim.
Okay, very nice. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, you published a Sefer Arzei HaLevanon. So first of all, let's tell the listeners, and Reb Shimon, feel free to jump in also, because you worked on the Sefer, you're the editor. What exactly is a Likut? People may be familiar with Likut Sefer. There's many of them, right? I would go on and on, right? So what is, just in general, what you did in this Sefer?
Okay, so there are many Likut Sefarim. I guess we'll specify how it's a little different than most of them. So basically, it's a collection of Divrei Torah we have a very wide range of Gedalim from all generations, from all different places. And it's not only Pirushim on the Psukim, it's even like anecdotes that have to do with the Pasuk. Let's say, like, I have in a place, Rabbi Yehuda ben Arash. He says he wasn't sure what to do, and he opened his Chumash, and it came out to a Pasuk in the Haftarah Pasha Shmini that Hashem told David, "I'll be with you." So that's not necessarily a parish of a pasuk, but it's a nice anecdote that happened with that pasuk. So this took a nice long time, and Baruch Hashem, we're zeichet to have this likut put out together with Aleh Zayis. I'll go through some of the things that make it a little different than most other likut sefarim. First of all, the sources. So we don't do any mefarshim on the page in the Makrais Kedelis. No, even if there's a nice lashon of Ramban or interesting of Ezra, not going to go. Even Rabbeinu Bachya's are a little don't really go. No chinuchs, no Reb Heschels, no Rabbi Yonasan, Eibshitz, no Chasim Sefers. I have nothing against the new Aleh Zayis Chasim Sefer, but I'm saying most of it's, a lot of it was brought already. Gaon's, Baal Shem Tov's, Beis Halevi's, Reb Chaim's, Chafetz Chaim, Chaim Kanievsky. We're a little after that. We're holding after that.
Can I jump in? First of all, thanks for having me again. I feel like next is becoming my Sunday afternoon pastime to be on this podcast with you. Shkoyach, very schmack to spend my Sundays this way. But regarding this Likut, I think to summarize what Rabbi is saying, he doesn't have any of the classics. The classics you'll find elsewhere. He's giving you classic Divrei Torah from non-classics, not the ones that everyone hears all the time, like Aryeh Ganz just he mentioned, and the Chassam Sofer. And that's really what you'll find if you open it up. You'll find people that you've heard of, but not the Torahs you hear every single Suda since you were 5 years old.
Right.
I think you'll also find some people you didn't hear of. I think everyone will find some. We'll go on when we mention the sources who we quote. I think even very well-learned people will have nice surprises.
Absolutely. I 100%. I have it open right now. Rav Moshe David Vali, a Talmud of Ramchal. Some scholars know who he is, but I would say the average person has never heard of him, and many, many more like that.
So some of the other things that make it a little different. Someone asked, there's a sefer called Eitzer Play Satira. It's a certain style sefer. It has a lot of interesting things. So someone asked me before I open my sefer if it has any connection. So I told him it couldn't be further from the truth. Over there, if he finds that the Shevet Musar and Medrash Tamri writes that kangaroos in Zimbabwe have 16 teeth, that's an shtickle. By me, that doesn't really fly. Also, there's very little gematrias or shetavas or Muslim, those things. There's many, as I mentioned, there's many like historical facts and stories that you'll get as you go along. That even if the parish of the pasuk isn't so amazing, you'll get very nice new facts. When did the Ritva laugh? Did anyone hear of the Ritva laughing? So I have a Talmud who says that he told the Ritva a certain pshat and he laughed from it. When did Rabbeinu Ephraim Agibur, one of the Balei Taisus, pack out of shul on Simchas Torah? He was so upset. What was the first tshuva sefer printed in America? Dadaris writes a nice letter to his son-in-law, who everyone knows is Reb Kook. I write the son-in-law because it's about a son-in-law. The letter's about a son-in-law. But I added in brackets that he was also his mechutin. That a lot of people don't know.
So what was the first tshuva printed?
I think it was called Aleh Zayis. Go find it. People who visited the Malbim and the Rashash, that was found in old newspapers. And they told them the Torah in old newspapers from 150 years ago. I found the interview that the Panovich Rav gave to the Ma'ariv newspaper, the Friday newspaper in Eretz Yisrael. The Shita Mekubetzes about Derech Halimud. He had a debate with a fellow gadol, the Rav of Tzfas of his time. He told him that if you finish, the Rav told him that I finished Shas so many times, and therefore I'm B'Yat HaLevanon. He said, if you finish Shas so fast, then obviously you have no idea how to learn. We have a letter from Rabbi Yashaber Soloveitchik. From the Rayatz of Lubavitch, who wrote to Rabbi Yashaber Soloveitchik, who wrote him something that Reb Chaim was once by Shavuos by the Rashab, and the Rashab honored him to say the Torah, and he wrote down the whole thing, and he said a whole piece of Torah by the table. So many people, there are some Svarim that quote the Torah, but they would never quote the whole story. I think that makes it a lot more interesting. A hesped I found in an old newspaper, a hesped that the Nachmanka from Haran gave him the Rashash and other gedolim of his times. We go through if there's some conspiracy theory that because of the Yad Yehuda's psak, the Rishner, because he paskin that he has to fast in Kippur, the Rishner was nifter. So we go through that. One of the Rishonim say that the Rambam says that when the keiches of the guf get weaker, so the seichel gets stronger. We bring a letter from a Rishon who says that he saw that personally. He was locked in jail, and he saw that how it got stronger. The famous Mordechai, that with the story of the Rishpam and Rabbeinu Tam, they were going on a wagon. He was almost nechshal and Klayim. The Meiri brings a story that someone was wronged in judgment by Bezdin, and when the Bakari got to Kia Mishpat Kimhu, the guy screamed out in shul, Mishpat La Shirimhu, and many other like anecdotes and stories that not only Purushim of the pasuk.
I want to emphasize, but now may sound like from what you were just saying, that's all anecdotes and stories, even if they're interesting stories from Gedolim and Rishayim and earlier Achronim, but it's not what it is. There are a lot of these things, and the source of quote are pshat on pasuk, are actual perushim on the psukim.
Yes,
so you're saying that you also bring these anecdotes. It's not merely just like any other sefer. Here's a nice vart to say about Yeshabas Sudi. Here's a nice vart. It's much more than that.
Correct. There's plenty of pshatim on the pasuk, but also we try to make it more colorful with the more anecdotes and stuff we could bring in.
Rabbi Aryeh, I don't want to talk for you, but would it be correct to say that you don't just randomly pick divrei Torah from certain individuals? There is some kind of message, not always, but very often there's a message coming from you, and you collect divrei Torah to support that message. In other words, they're not just random divrei Torah. There is a certain, your personality, and I would say your opinions and your hashpah comes through the sefer with what you choose to say, when and where. And you do sometimes put together a string of sources to support a certain idea, which not necessarily is so closely related to the pasuk. It's more related to the idea that you're trying to convey.
Yes, sometimes that happens, but also it depends who the person is. So sometimes from certain more left-wing leaning people, I only make sure to bring right-wing stuff, because we want to balance it out. From Rishonim, the very chashuv Rishonim, it could bring anything, even the most controversial thing. If something controversial, you can't bring something controversial. So yeah, it's a big challenge.
But as you notice, there's no randomness over here. It's what he brings someone who is very cheshbon. At the risk of becoming the interviewer over here, could you elaborate a little bit about the controversial things from the Rishonim that you bring, and especially maybe what some things that pertain to women?
Okay. We bring up Barbanel about that women weren't created b'tzelem Elokim, I believe. I believe there's other Rishonim would say that as well, but I only brought them from the Barbanel. We also bring about if one's permitted to hit his wife. There's a lashon of Shmuel Nagid in a piyut that's quite mashmazeh. I bring a lot of other mekayros in the.
Do you quote the Torah Aruch from the Ksav Yad and with Yaakov and Leah?
So actually, I bring that separately in Al Mekayma in the later parashiyos. But no, there's different mekayros over there. I actually found there are Bag and Sheftim, Beishas Lapidus. But then there's Hu Yimshal Bach. There's a lot of different tires like that.
So let me jump in before Rav Shimon. Let me jump in because Rav Shimon asked the question. Like you said, you can ask questions. That's fine. Why? So, for example, something like this. Why bring in such makaras? Why discuss such sources? Is it just because they're there and you want people to know that these were shittas of Rishonim that don't exist, that people don't know of? Why bring in things like this?
No. So I have no. I'm not opinion-minded on this. It's simply to make it. I'm looking for things that are interesting that are not normally discussed. So I think these are topics that get people going. The Torah, I'm saying, they're daily Rishonim held, and we're trying to get more original things that were held, even though times have changed, and today that wouldn't necessarily be the case.
I would like to just mention that having worked with Rabbi Aryeh in the Sefer, his wife is very involved, and they seem to get along very, very well. So there's no concern over here of him practicing any of these things.
I got Rav Shimon. I want to apologize to you. You mentioned on a different podcast about how the Ingalite are learning the whole time, and people send their wives to pick up the Svarim, and then you can't learn. I hope you weren't talking about me.
No. They work together very nicely.
Now, before we go more on the sources and different interesting things that you bring, which we've discussed already a bunch, so why did you decide, Aryeh, to write this Sefer? Obviously, like you said, you bring a lot of fascinating anecdotes and sources, but there's so many Likutim Sfarim. You're going to have to obviously talk about it on a podcast and get people to hear about it, people to pick it up and to find out what's interesting. Why? What made you think, okay, I'm going to put together a Likut Sefer? This is what I'm going to do.
Okay, so, first of all, I just love Sfarim and all different types of different Teredik stuff. Also, interestingly, my grandfather, his name is Rabbi Nolman, he put out a small sefer, a book called Zakta Gutvart. He once gave us, all the grandchildren, a present about writing. Everyone should take, he gave a notebook with one page for each parsha, and if you hear something nice, then write it down and put it in. So he actually gave me the idea to get going. It wasn't originally for a sefer, but then as we went on and so many fascinating things came together, I figured, why not lehanas behem bnei adam?
So basically, essentially, getting back to what you were saying. So the uniqueness of the Sefer here really lies in the sources, the variety of sources that you quote, and we didn't even get to, besides for the people that you're mentioning, from the sources that you quote them from. It's just to say that there are gedolim that you quote from things written, I think you mentioned, right, in newspapers or interviews they gave, or they spoke at conventions or elsewhere in speaking, or, mipi shmua, or you found in some, journals and things that aren't found in your standard sources or standard svarim that are just pull off the shelf and look it up. Is that merely, am I capturing properly the uniqueness? How would you explain? Like we said, we discussed this already, but when you're explaining this now to a listener, to someone interested in the Sefer, how would you say, okay, Arzei HaLevanon, I see, has 2 volumes. two big volumes, Al Hatorah. What is unique about, like, how would you just quick, in short, explain what makes the Sefer unique?
What makes the Sefer unique is that I'm hoping that no one will fall asleep on it. It goes from, it's not one, let's say, there's some Likut Sefer of Bali Musar. So it's like, basically the same type of thing, one after the other. Here, it's all different types, all different strategies. It's not only things in Musbit, there's also regular Pirushim, just more, when a Mefarish gives more of an interesting shot or something interesting inside. So we're just trying to make it enjoyable and Nuschaira Al Hatorah. Obviously, we can't find, there's always going to be people who heard of this and then hear this, but for the most part, very enjoyable new things and from all different backgrounds and places.
So as a follow-up, is there a specific style that you're looking for, that you employ or that you use? Or it's like you're saying, you're just looking, which is fine, to make it unique and to stand out, but like this is a different Sefer than your standard whatever other Likut Sefer, tens of Likut Sefer. This is different. But like you said, it's not like Aryeh Ganz. That's a different, unique style, but that's not what you're going for. So there is some sort of connection through a theme running throughout the Sefer for what you quote.
May I say something?
Sure.
I would think that if in a nutshell you'd want to bring about what's the common thread and what's unique about the Sefer would be that he's been looking for original topics, original sources, historical content, shocking content, and unexpected content. In other words, there's original topics, things that are usually not discussed necessarily in Likutei Svarim. You wouldn't find it in any other Likut Sefer, like some that he's mentioned before. You have original sources, Svarim that you don't usually find, not the typical Svarim, as Rabbi Aryeh mentioned, names of Svarim that many of us have not heard of ever before, and certainly not commonly found in Likut Svarim. Rabbi Aryeh mentioned he has a lot of historical content, which most Likut Svarim do not have. So you walk away with hearing about personalities you haven't known about and events you haven't known about. There's shocking content, things that you would not expect should be written in any Sefer, and he brings those things to your attention. And there's also unexpected content, like something that kanois from Rabbi Bar Soloveitchik, or even the unexpected, seeing, how in one page you have the Satmarov, the Talmud of the Ritva, Israel Hillesheimer, who he calls the Rosh of Beis Medrash L'Rabbonim, and Rabbi from Yeshua Soloveitchik, all mixed into one page. That would be something that's also unexpected, not just from the content, also from the sources, how they are side by side. I think that, so the common thread here is its uniqueness is the fact that the common thread is unique content. That's what it is.
Yeah, and once we're at that, I'll say just to give examples of a few provocative or very unique things that we bring. I bring that there was a certain chassid in Ashkenaz in the times of the Mariel, the Rebbe Mariel, who had a separate house for Basar B'chalav. For Basar, one for Basar, one for Chalav. Now, I learned Basar B'chalav and I went through all the Likut Sefer. I never came across this. There's a Sefer Abatim. He was in times in the Erie. He brings that they put in poison into the Seita water. Ayin Sham V'tim Sanachas. Simcha Zalagriga, the Diana Brisk, he said not to say by Kiddush Shalvan, he said not to say Lamalas Pigim Salvana because we want the mitzvahs to be Lasad Lavai. There is a Rishon who says that you need 4 things in Shalach Manas, not 2. It says in the pasuk of L'may Shai L'mana, he learns it out from the pasuk because the Chaz v'Sheik, the H for 1, and they're called a mana.
You're giving away the whole Sefer. People aren't going to buy it anymore.
Don't worry, there's a lot more.
Now keep going. It's good. It's good to give people a flavor for what the Sefer is. Besides we're talking about the style and sources, but this is important. Keep going.
What else can we think of? There's a certain Rishon. He was from the Sanal Pumi. He was from Teiman. Normally, Teiman is not my thing, but the Rambam writes on him. I think we could go with him. He has a whole piece that I bring Pashas Precious about the Maila of death, what it does for the world. It clears out the world, and very interesting. We bring the famous, for some people famous, the Yavitz out his Nisayin Yosef Atzadik. He says it was possibly greater than the Nisayin Yosef Atzadik. That I got some flack for. We bring Rabbeinu Bachia, who says that the whole story of the Aryeh Ganz we bring the Akedah Sitzchok, who says on this the more left people like that he was upset because she said him because a woman's her main job is not to have children. We bring the missionary Shaina, who brings a very interesting minig that in all the dayers, the ketanas who got married when they were still ketanas, they go to the mikvah for nida and they make a bracha. And also once like things like that, I add in. No one knows who the missionary Shaina Mishnah Achrayna were. I add in he was a Talmud of the name Elimelech. That is not so known. I bring certain Chassidish Paiskim who say that today we almost never go back for Yalav Yavai and Ritzei if you forget it. Obviously, it's not Lamaisa, but the Avnei Nezer was Makbran Tamas Chayanim, even though he was the Yisrael. The Alter von Kelm was Pirish from his wife, Rabbi Labyan said, and he describes it. This is a little more famous for people. Daf Yomi, the end of Yuma, the Taisi Shannon brings down the Rabbeinu Tam, Machlikas Rabbeinu Tam and Rabbeinu Elchanan. Rabbeinu Tam says that Yafet Talmud Terim Derech Eretz, that Derech Eretz is the Iker. Klei says that about Tshuva should that B'Oisei Isha B'Oisei Makam is that he should do it. And then actually I bring a different Rishon who says that someone tried doing that and he was Nichshal.
Should do it, just to clarify. Should do it means he should put himself in a situation and overcome temptation.
Correct. There is Shash who says that the Beis Hamikdash is not going to be on top of the Kaisel Plaza where we think it's going to be. It's going to be a different place. Any parish. He does the pasuk like that, and also in a different place he says that there was already a third Beis Hamikdash. The Tiferes Yisrael and the Ben Ish Chai who mention Menhagim and the Tzavais and Menhagim in Baghdad about kissing a sister, which is straight out Kenegad Halacha. We bring from Rabbi Yashav Soloveitchik, we bring from Chaim that when you learn things that are Darbanan, you're not Mekayim, it's just Talmud Torah D'Oraisa. That's why the Briskers learn Kadshim. That's what he says. He actually argues. And we bring the Dvar Avram, the Kavner Rav, who says that there's two ways how the tefillah goes. He wants to be masber how tefillah is a skabel. He wants to be masber why Goyim is different than Yidden, and he actually explains that one of them works through the waves in the air. Simple, practical. That the waves in the air go up since the Beis Medrash is full of the tefillah. Simply goes up to Hashem, and many other interesting things. Okay,
so I just want to point out that first of all these things though are written up psukim. The Sefer is on Parashas HaTorah, and everything is written. So all these interesting stories and really interesting chidushim and things that outlandish things, they're all rooted in the psukim. At the end of the day, something else is you mentioned a lot of the sources that you mentioned Rishonim, and then you mentioned a lot of. I don't know. Besides the Ben Ish Chai, I didn't hear any of them being Sephardi. They all seem like, or what people would assume Sephardim are. They all seem very, whether it's Ashkenaz or I don't know, Litvish, Chasidis, whatever words you want to use, non-Sephardic. Is that, on purpose? Is that something that you just, or do you quote Sephardi that you just didn't mention?
Okay. First of all, I do quote the Ben Yayad Al Hatorah. I think he actually wrote it. That's Al Hatorah. I quote the Kaf HaChaim has a Sefer Al Hatorah. I quote it a lot. I guess I stole a nice amount of stuff from Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sefer. I do bring Rav Vadia in a few places. He has very nice pshatim. And I bring the Stei Chemed Mipi Shmuel. That's just some of them. But yeah, it's overwhelmingly Ashkenazi. The reason is because, it's also overwhelmingly Litvish. They say Rabbi Yosef Buxbaum from Mechan Yerushalayim, one of the tricks of the trade was that he knew that he had different departments, for Hungary, for Lita. So he said he's not going to give a real Litvish man to do the Maram Shek. You have to be nimshach to something. I mean, you could give me a job to edit some old Ksavya from someone I have no connection to. It's not. You have to have the drive to do it naturally. So yeah, I'm Ashkenazi. I do, when I find Sephardi, I do try to bring, but obviously it's going to be overwhelming Ashkenazi.
It's So let's talk about something I'm sure a lot of many listeners listening to this are trying to think is, okay, where do you get your sources from? Is this merely Yitzhak Chachma search? Is this something you learning all these svarim? Like I said, it's not only that you're quoting outlandish things or interesting mechaber. I mean, you're quoting the sources that you're getting them from. Maybe you could talk about that, just where you get things from. So where did you find these things, and how did you find all these interesting sources? Some of them are written in svarim, but even then, how did you find it? But how some of these, how did you get them?
Okay, if someone thinks they're all from searching on Yitzhak Chachma, if they could please tell me the secret. What do? You type in, you just type in the pasuk and you get 50,000 results. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to say I didn't use Yitzhak Chachma, but a lot of, the Sfarim from Rishonim, they either had to be quoted or a lot of them I went through. A lot of the other things, there's actually some things that are not in Yitzhak Chachma. There's more from academic places, academic journals and books. And Agav Nachi, I would like to point out that when I was in Lakewood recently, and over here we have the National Library. That's where I used to hang out a lot, at least. But in Lakewood, one of the only places where you could find some academic stuff from Rishonim or whatever is on Ukes on the second floor. So thank you for that. Also, a lot of the things, just if you keep your eyes and ears open, then they just come as you're learning. I'll give an example. In Kela, I'm learning Mikvais now. So in the fourth parak, the Rambam there's a machlekes if you do the whole mikvah b'amshacha, if the mikvah is kasher or not. This is not in the Sefer. This will maybe be in the next one. There's machlekes if the whole mikvah is you do amshacha, if it's kasher. So the Rambam has really strong lashonos against the man that holds kasher. Very, very strong. It could be I would even bring those lashonos in Perish Mishnayos just alone. But then in the Aris, they're mafing to somewhere else, and it turns out that apparently there was someone before the Rambam who paskin like that it's kasher, and they dealt him al zakin mamre. They killed him because it was zakin mamre because he paskin that the mikvah is kasher. So things like that, that would go good on the pasuk of zakin mamre. Things like that, they just pop up as you're learning. If you keep your eyes and ears open, then you come up with a lot of things.
Okay, and now I'm, for example, I see you do mention a lot of things with Pia Shmuel, like speeches. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said this, and various other Gedolim. They said some, they said this in the speech here. Is that things that you found transcribed somewhere, or is that you actually went and decided, okay, I'm going to listen to speeches that at that Gouda convention or whatever? You just actually listened to the recording, and then you came up and you wrote it down. How did those things come about?
Yes, so there are different ones. There's some of each. There were a lot that were done from old magazines and newspapers, such as the Siddur Shvart. I did a lot from a lot of Gedolim in America. A lot of it, they had to be translated from Yiddish. I hope I did a good job. There's some I heard from other places, but there's some, that I listened to the recording of Rabbi Kamenetsky and others, and I went through it many times to get his exact lashon. And the way I quote it, I don't think it would be printed in a sefer a lot of the times. I met in my neighborhood lives Rabbi Yosef Kamenetsky. He put out Nosson Kamenetsky's son. He put out Amos Yaakov on Nach, and I told him son of the Lashonis. It was hard for him to take that Rabbi Yaakov actually said it. He says, "I'll tell you in Parshas Vaychi on Leser Shevet Yehuda." Says, "I'll tell you not like the Ramban. I think in this I'm smarter than the Ramban, because Ein Chacham Kval Nisayin, and the Rambam didn't speak from Nevuah. And because the Ramban didn't see old Mashiach Sheker and old Deiris, Ayin Sham, many things like that. So I listened to it many times and took it over. So there's many transcriptions, and there's also some in Pia Shmua that couldn't give exact marmakam.
Regarding the Rebbe Kamenetsky that you just mentioned, interesting. You said you just met Rebbe Kamenetsky. I just met Rebbe Daniel Lustat. He's the one who put out most of Rabbi Yaakov's Ksavim. The one on Navi was put up by Rabbi Yosef, his cousin, but actually Rabbi Yaakov Kiyadua entrusted him with putting out all the Svarim for Rabbi Yaakov, and he published everything basically that we have from Rabbi Yaakov except for that one sefer on Navi Chelik Sheni, which I heard that Chelik Rishon is supposed to be coming out shortly.
Correct, that's what
and he told me, Rabbi Nustat, that he's currently working on redoing the Amos Yaakov Al Hatorah, which if I may humbly say that in my humble opinion, I would say from the two most important svarim that came out from Gedolei Yisrael on Chumash post World War II, I would say Chiddushei Maran Nizalev and Emes Liyakiv probably are the two most important svarim. If anyone disagrees, I'd like to hear your opinion. I mean, the Briskerov, he just started a new genre of writing Chiddushei Torah on Chumash. That's obviously very important. Many people imitated his style and continued working further with his style. So he created just what Reb Chaim did, ala Rambam, and making, lumdis. He made a new style of learning. The Briskerov could be credited to doing the same thing in Chumash, and it's been very popular since. But the other one I would say is Emes Liyakiv, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, a very unique sefer, groundbreaking in many areas. He speaks about subjects that most Gedolei Yisrael don't talk about. He deals with TikTok. He has some kind of very interesting original content that only you'll find from him, an interesting take on things. And it's a very important sefer. And Rabbi Nustat said he's redoing it now with more information. And I told him, I don't know when this is going to go on the air, but this was this past Shabbos. I met him and I told him that I'm going to give him your sefer, which I gave him already, so he can use it for sources if he has anything new content for Yankiv. I know when I was working on the Torah V'das project, they did a 2-volume Muhammad Sifta when their 100th anniversary, and they tried finding original content that was never published before from all the Rosh Yeshiva. We had the greatest difficulty in tracking down new things from Yankiv. I couldn't find anything new from Yankiv. As a matter of fact, we ended up publishing something which was really published before, but we redid it a little bit. At the time, I turned to whoever I could to find if they have anything new from Yankiv. One of the people I contacted was Rabbi Yosef's father, Rav Nassim, and he actually told me that the only address I can go to is Rabbi Nustat. I went back to him, and there wasn't anything new, because anything new he redid recently, the Emes Liyakiv al Shas, and there's a lot of new things there as well. But there is nothing out. But I showed him your sefer. Perhaps we will discover something that he hasn't found before in your sefer. Time will tell if we'll find anything new from your sefer or not. But that's just interesting. And besides Rabbi Yankiv, there could be many other people while working on Sefer Gedolei Yisrael. I would recommend that they take a look at your sefer and find new sources and new things that they wouldn't have known. There'd be malakit things from any Gadol Yisrael in the last 100, 200 years. I mean, Rishonim, I'm sure they can find if you found it. But if it's last 200 years, there's a lot of new content here that you can find that you wouldn't find elsewhere.
Just a quick anecdote about Rabbi Yosef, some lost material. He mentioned to me once that he, when he was a younger man, learning in Kail and Eretz Yisrael, so Zayder Rabbi Yaakov came to visit, and he made his rounds to all the Gedolim. And of course, the conversations were extremely interesting. And his rich Kail did not let him go. And till this day, he's so upset. There's so much lost content there and amazing conversation. Rabbi Yaakov wasn't just, he wasn't just a brisker who came there and sat quietly. He would go through he loved these things. So, Chaval D'Abdin.
Rav Nassim Kamenetsky, when I met him, I once asked him what his father said about the Briskerov. And he told me that his father never met the Briskerov in Europe because Rabbi Yankov was from Lita and the Briskerov was in Poland, and they weren't able to travel from one place to the other. But when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he met the Briskerov for the first time. So I said, so what was Rabbi Yankov's impression when he came back from meeting him? What was his impression of the Briskerov? So Rabbi Nassim says, I'm not going to tell you. I was living in Brisk at the time because you're not going to talk to me anymore. I said, okay, please, just tell me. So he said, Zeir an intelligenter Mensch. Rabbi Yankov's reaction to Briskerov is a very intelligent man. And it's interesting that that was his reaction. But Kiyadua, the Briskerov was a very intelligent man, and Yankov appreciated very much intelligent people.
So getting back to the sources, jump back to that for a minute. So like I said, you do mention, you say who they were. I'm just randomly looking through the Sefer now. At the end of the piece, Rav Shneur Kotler, Rashivas Likut, Yosef David Levi Soloveitchik, Rashivas Brisk. You also have, as you call him, Yosef David Levi Soloveitchik, Boston. Then you have Rochanan Wasserman, Gail Misatmer, and then this is besides for Tzara Malabram Saba, Drushas Netziv, Drush Tezbov. I'm just continuously flipping through, Nemuke Ridvaz, and you mentioned many other sources. But as the listener will be able to tell from what I'm reading, you don't say, well, it's from, it's this and this place. You don't say exactly where you got each Makar from. You just listen to Admir of Gail Misatmer. It doesn't say where. Reb Chaim Soloveitchik ben Agrizmi Brisk, the Reb Chaim, the Briskerov son you have right here. But you don't say where you're getting this from. If I'm emphasizing this stuff, so why is that? So why do you decide you're just gonna write it, and you're not gonna write the exact source that you got it from?
Right. Okay. So some people have spoken to me about that. The reason for a lot of that is that a lot of times the source is not any more reliable than Mipia Shmuah. If some fellow in Williamsburg prints a sefer today and says a vart from Biel Misamer, that's not in the Riel, so why should I? It's the same Mipia Shmuah. So what are we gaining? What I do always quote is a lot of times I have, especially from Litvish Gedalim, we'll get to that soon. Their Talmidim, a lot of them were Rabbanim in America. We go through that a lot. So then I quote, the sefer was printed in Tafresh Ayin Beis in New York, and he brings from his Rebbe from the Netziv, and that were very. And the Rishonim also, we try to always bring the sefer, not always, but we try to. But a lot of the times it's just either it's B'Pia Shmuah or the Makar is not any better than B'Pia Shmuah. Let's say if it's in a newspaper, let's say there's a hesped from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, son of Aaron, bring a few points to that amazing hesped. So right, a Pardes, X next volume. But if it's not really adding anything, we don't always bring the Makar.
So why I would always find the same page, Alfi Menashe, Simon Kuf Mem, or Menashe Me'ilya, there you say exactly where it is. And then you'd have Arba Kinyanim or Ben Yehuda, Reb Shloime Kanafenton Mimolina B'Shem Rabbi Haritfor. That's the laughing piece that you mentioned before. How come over there it doesn't say where exactly in the sefer it is? On the same page you could find Reb Israel Hildesheimer, and it doesn't say where that is, and the Ritvaz, it doesn't say where it is. So why does the Ritvaz and Reb Israel Hildesheimer and the Arba Kinyan doesn't get an exact Maramakim, or Menashe Me'ilya does?
Right. Okay. So sometimes there were hidden reasons for that, but sometimes it was just simply it was I collected it a long time ago, and I don't have I'm not a major gvir who has 30 people working, 30 Talmidei Chacham working out of staff. This was basically solo and no editor, and so that's it. That's the best we could do.
You're saying Reb Shimon's job as editor wasn't that?
No, he was. No, he did not. He did not edit. Yeah, he was not editor. They did absolutely amazing work, but it was not in the editing field. But Baruch Hashem, we managed it to par. I actually, in the middle, I had it sad to do with my serve cook, because I was thinking of doing it with with Machain that would take it under their wings, and I was actually hoping they would edit it. So I had a very interesting meeting with my serve cook, with the fellow in charge. It was actually in Yiddish. We spoke in Yiddish in my serve cook building. Shirvadia coined the mezuzah of Yerushalayim, because it's right when you come into Yerushalayim. Very interesting meeting, and they were going to publish it as is. They felt it met the standards. I didn't do it for financial reasons, because they don't give you the svarim, and just wasn't worth it.
But just say that right. You get a better deal with Aleh Zayis.
There you go. And Aleh Zayis is absolutely amazing. They do an amazing job. I'm sure if it would have been edited by them, then you wouldn't have had these.
Now, one thing that I would say, even more than that would have been, I think I could say this. I think it would have been L'Tayeles, maybe in the next edition, or we'll get to anything future projects. Would be just an index, a bibliography in the back, which is not a bibliography. There you go, Shimon. Not for like exactly where people can find the sefer, but at least people opening the sefer are interested in finding, like I said, different from Yeshua salvation, you quote, things, not so many stuff printed from Al Hatorah. So where can they find things from him in the sefer? Right now, there is nothing. You have to just flip through it, and you can't find any specific place. So that's something. Is there any reason why you didn't decide to do it, or maybe you would entertain doing something like that in the future?
Maybe I wouldn't been doing something in the future, but I'm saying a lot of times, let's say from Yeshua Salvation, so a lot of times it's just a shmuah flying around. Some guy printed it, so it's not going to give you any better clarity if I give you that makar.
No, I don't mean that.
He's saying they should have an index so I can find all of Yeshua's divrei Torah.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be a possibility for next edition. I was also thinking of doing like for all the Gdayan to give us, like in the beginning of Mishulchan Gavaya, who I'm actually friendly with, he has like all the Gdayalim, like a one-line thing about them, like their years and basically what they did. I was thinking of doing that. It got too hard. Also, some people I would want to be marich too much. Some people I would want to be makatzer more. It's a little too much for me. I would probably have to hire someone else to do it.
Also, I want to jump in, is that the Sfarim are very thick. You managed to get into 2 volumes, which is really nice. But I get once you start doing that, these two things, which are very nice, it's going to get into like 3-volume territory, which is, I guess, fine, but that's like what would have happened. But I do agree with you. I think that would be very nice to tell. Just people just don't know who they're reading from. Sometimes some of these Gedolim may be familiar with people, some of these Rishonim may have heard of, but like I said, a lot of them, no idea who they are. So people don't know who they are. So it would have been important just to have one-liners and to have the index in the back.
Right. So I wasn't sure what to do about certain, let's say Reb Nisan Al-Puni from Taman, we mentioned before. So some people told me I should just write in the back who he was. And that way, every time I don't have to write that what the Rambam wrote about him. The only thing is that I felt that if I would be reading such a thing, if I'm not turning to the back every time, so I would have no interest in looking what I would think Reb Nisan Al-Puni lived 100 years ago in Taman. And I have no interest in hearing what he has to say. So certain times I feel that it's better to write on the spot that he was a Talmud of the Rashba. Rishonim, I normally do give the obscure Rishonim that I'll give a rundown soon. I normally do give a basic where they were Talmud of or something like that.
So I would say he does do that. In other words, you'll see that when Rabbi Aryeh, when he doesn't expect you to know who it is, he would point out. I'll just give you 2 examples. I'm looking at it right now. Pirurei Oiro Rabbi Yehuda Leib Rogalin. So he writes next to Yerushalayim Tafresh Sadis. I know it's someone in the 1930s in Yerushalayim quoting from his Rebbe, the Netziv. So that's informative. Or in he quotes from Gedalia Nadal. He'll add on Rosh Koil Chazanish. So in case someone doesn't know exactly who Gedalia Nadal was, they have some kind of idea to place him and who he was. So he does that where I guess he expects you not to know exactly who the person is, or he wants to add something about him.
Right. Certain times we have to give a little more information. Let's say when we get to one of the favorite Rishonim is Moshe Taku or Teku. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So there we write. I wrote that Huva B'Gdei Rishonim. They're in Banan Gittin of Zayin with Aleph. Aber Ayin the Rambam and Raven Tshuva where and if you look it up, correct. So there we give, certain times you have to, the smarter the person, the more he'll get. But yeah, so we did do that sometimes, especially very Shainim.
Another thing is your Hakdama is like 1 page. It's like a 1-page, very short Hakdama. You quote like a nice vart, and then you have like thank you. I mean, why not write more of a Hakdama about what we've been discussing, the style, why just write such a tiny? I found the Sefer. I was prepared for the podcast. Let me see what it's about. And well, the Hakdama doesn't really say much.
Okay, so first of all, as you mentioned before, I was very scared about the size of the Sefer. That we were running out of space. I was thinking it would be like 700 plus pages would be more like Chavetzal Sasharon. That would be a little too big. So I tried cutting everything unnecessary out. But the main reason is because I personally think that, if I write my Chaburas on Baba Kama, I spent 5 years writing my Chaburas on Baba Kama, and then I put it out. So when a young man is in, he's in the middle of his shots and he opens it up. So he's not interested in going through my amazing marachas of Baba Kama. The only thing he looks at are the askamas and the aktama, and that's the only interesting part, and the rest he'll just put it away. I think that my sefer is the whole sefer is the part you want to read the rest of the shots. So I don't think the hakdama is necessary at all. They're just the derech agav. And I got Baruch Hashem, I got a lot of feedback. I must say that one of the biggest hanais elam hazeh that there is in the world, I discovered, is when you're sitting in some Israeli shul and random Israeli guy who has no idea who you are, he sits down near you and he's learning Arzei HaLevanon because I donated to the shul near me. But not only that, he's just like opens it. It's like open the whole time, like when the sitter is like the agav piece, and like the main thing is that. So that's unbelievable feeling. Baruch Hashem. If you come to my shul, like it's from when I donated it, like in early Bereshis Parashas till now, it's like on the side of a 9th grade bacher's ksuvas daftas, like they're really worn out. So Baruch Hashem.
So you mentioned a few times that the sources, you have a lot of Rishonim, different Talmidim, you said quotes from them. So maybe you want to mention, I don't know, we kind of, it's been discussed throughout this episode, but if you want to just run down a couple of sources, list and quote of different sources, if you want to run through some of them.
Okay, so we can go through some Rishonim. Tell me if I'm being too long, because there's a long list. Not in any order. We have from Moshe Darshan. Obviously, I'm not talking about what Rashi brings from him. There's a sefer that maybe Epstein put out 100 years ago in Wien, and there's someone today, there's a professor today put out, so I got stuff from there. I have from Rashi, obviously not Rashi Al Hatorah or any of his famous Perushim. In one Haftarah there's a tshuva from Rashi who explains the pasuk in the Haftarah. A different fascinating tshuva I managed to put on some pasuk is he goes through Shalom Bayis. He's telling someone about the Shalom Bayis, and he mentions that even the Goyim, the Christians there are better. Fascinating tshuva from Rashi. We have from the Sefer Hagan, one of the Aleh Zayis, I think. We have from Moshe Dilaon, the one who is Megala, the Zayar Kaddish. Probably some of your other guests could weigh in more on that. We have from Yaakov Bar Sheishes, who has been there, lived in times of Rabbi Yena. Shvili Amuna, the Enoch called the Rosh. Tzra Amar, who's the grandfather-in-law of Bisesef. Bal Amar and Zaktama. Belazar Mi Tarshikan, who lived in times of the Meiri. I have a lot from the Meiri. The Meiri has a lot of, and Maimar Chachams and those things. Yeah, there's a lot in the Meiri. Arba Kinyanim we mentioned before. Talmud Dvar. Yisib ben Shushan, who's a friend of the Rivash. Tolas Yitzchak, who is the uncle and brought up Bisesef. The Milman Talmidim, I think that's how it's pronounced. A lot of Rishonim bring in. The Rajba, there's a Sefer Chassan Damen. He Pashtas lived in the times of the Maril. The Rivash, there's a Sefer Chakmeini he's brought in Rashi. He lived in the times of the Gainim. He's brought in Rashi twice, Al Shas. Rabbi Sadi Gain, Rabbi Hai Gain, Shmuel Bar Chafni. He's a little more controversial. Ravam ben Aram, the Rambam's family, we have Rabbi Maimon and Gerson Achama. Ravam ben Rambam, okay, he's not so uncommon. Rabbi David Anagid's a little more uncommon, ain't called the Rambam. And then even more than that is Rabbi David ben Yeshua, who is I think a seventh generation of the Rambam. He has a very interesting sefer. He talks a little about despite this there. I think the Breslers like it a lot. We have the Sefer HaMaskil. He was a grandson he claims at least to be the grandson of Rashi and a Talmud of Rabbeinu Peretz. I do mention every time I bring him again that there's some, I think Professor Tashma was not too, he held he was a mamash low life and nothing special, with Epicurus, I think. So I do bring that on the bottom, that there's different opinions about him. Rabbeinu Baruch, the author of the Sefer Chachma, it's not around anymore. The Rabag, the Aruba Sabaisem, the Kadmain. Ravam Bar Chia Nasi, a lot of very interesting things from him. Rabbeinu Ephraim Ibuna, Rabbeinu Ephraim Agibor, we mentioned before. The Ravan, the Raviyah, the Geras HaMosar, he lived in the times of the Ran, Chestai Krashkash, the first Ravid, the second Ravid. Rabbeinu Nisim Gain, the Sefer Kushis, he lived it's unknown who he was. Again, some people don't hold him too stark, but he lived in the generation after the Maram. David Ram, the Uraim, based in the Chemyesh, the Talmud of the Rosh. We have some letters from the Rav and Bartanura, who we managed to put also there, Psukim, very interesting letters. The Maril, his Rebbe, the Marash Neustadt, Rabbi Yochanan Luria, the ends of times of Rishonim, Rabbi Yehuda ben Arash, the Shibei Aleket, the Sefer Pardes, the Talmud of the Rosh, Seidel Aderech, who's the Talmud of Yehuda ben Arash, the Yisrael Eilam, I believe, who's the Talmud of the Rosh. He's very Zmanim, that field. The Tashbas Katan, who is a Talmud of the Merami Rottenberg. Minchas Knais, he was busy with the Rashba to Aser philosophy. Mishdoria Parchi, who was the Kaftor of Farach. Bring from Rebrechia Hanaktan, who is also, I bring there that Yesh Aimim, that he made the Shir HaYichud. I believe that's what Shir thought. Others hold he was again, nothing special. He was simple. He used to write over Svarim. But I just write the good part over there. I don't bring the regular Meshiv's Kanim. I bring special. The Staliner Chaim put out an interesting Balai I bring a few times. Shrira Gain, we bring a nephew of Rabbi Chassid. I don't even bring the Sefer Chassidim. That's too common. I bring the Sefer Chassidim Tinyana, who is a nephew of the Rosh. The Sefer Atamid, to Reuven, he was the Rebbe of the Meiri. The Meiri, I think I bring him twice. The Meiri writes fascinating Lashenis about him. The Sefer Atadir, the Teres HaMincha, he was the Talmud of the Rashba. Rabbi Leo from London, I bring him a few times. Like at Yesher, the Bala Agur, the Agur, who's quoted in the Paiskim all the times, he has a fascinating Sefer with riddles. It's cool.
So let me just jump in. Okay, so I don't want to cut you off, but obviously there's many Rishonim. A lot of those names, obviously some of them people are familiar with. I just mentioned that there's Mincha, right? About Shalom just published it a few years ago, and then there's obviously they published the second edition. Now it's been published by someone else. But it's Ramor is around in print. Aleh Zayis is around from Moznaim. But a lot of those from are not around or interesting. Even some of those people are not familiar with. So that obviously a very interesting, fascinating collection. Just to reiterate what we spoke about before you get, if you want to go post Rishon, you want to discuss a little bit of later Achronim, or Achronim in general. So a lot of these Sfarim, like you said, you went through or you searched, but either if you searched, you weren't just searching a pasuk and then running through everything. You had to actually do the work, do the legwork to come up, find this exact piece that's interesting, unique, and then put it into the Sefer.
Right. At Rishonim Sfarim, I don't really know if anyone knows of a good way to search for the next Sefer. Maybe they can tell me. I'm saying to put them Sukkim into each Sefer. I'm not sure exactly how to do that.
Okay, so maybe now talk about some Achronim.
Okay, so Achronim is interesting. People pointed out. So Rishonim and Goinim are very nimshach too. From the Rishonim till the invent of Chassidus, I basically skip over. A lot of Likut Sefer who are trying to get obscure stuff have a lot from them, from like people who live like 400 years ago. Personally, again, I'm saying they're huge, but I'm personally not so nimshach. So, who's the Rav in Brisk after the Bach? It doesn't talk to me so much. So we basically go away with that. A few exceptions are Baruch Hashem, we have the Marsha, Ms. Einikel. Einikel wrote a small sefer. It was almost lost. And he brings a lot of things that he heard from his grandfather that are not printed in the Marsha. Sometimes Ramon Teres Ayla or B'Shalom Al-Kabitz, the Sefer Chaim, the brother Moral, the Seder Adairis. So that's basically where it goes over there. Also, I just something to mention before. Some of the Sfarim are the special thing for Kabbalah Sfarim, such as Ramesh Dilon or Ramesh Davali, as we said, it was a Talmud Chaver of the Mikal. So those Sfarim are almost all Kabbalah. I also bring one of the Rishonim the Achim Makdeshim. Normally I try to keep titles, Rabbi or Chassidim a little different, but normally we try to keep titles the same. But for their Achim Makdeshim, I think Ezra and Israel from Grona, they were the Rebbeim of the Ramban Nistar. So those type of Sfarim, they're almost all Kabbalah. So to get something nigla out of something that's not, with the nukva and whatever, that I consider accomplishment. So basically, from besides for those few exceptions, from Rishonim, we basically skip to the 1700s.
Okay, and like you said, Rosh Yeshivas, I don't know if you want to give a whole list. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, you really went through. We've discussed a lot of examples, a lot of contemporary Rosh Yeshivas, and really anyone. I think it's like any Rosh Yeshiva the past 100 years or so or more. You is fair game. You quote a lot of them, and so there's a lot of not only hindsight like today, but a lot of previous daily Rosh Yeshiva are quoted in here. So I know people are they're in there. I don't know if there's
But especially like the Gdei Litta who weren't so, who is not so much Torah from, that I have a special, maybe just go through a few. A big favorite is, you mentioned before, Menashe Elyer. He's a huge favorite. He was a very interesting life story, very unclear also. He was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. His Sfarim were burnt. He was very unclear what was going on. He wanted to go to Berlin to learn other Chachmas. There's actually a fascinating letter from the Pnei Menachem. He wrote when his son, Reb Shaul Alter Shlita, when he became a Chassan, he wrote a letter to the Lubavitch Rebbe, and he wrote over there how his son, Reb Shaul, is a major Talmid Chacham, whatever. And he writes over there that the Kala is an Einikel from Menashe Elyer, and I believe, I forget, it was a long time ago. He either brings Chassidim, or maybe he brings from the Tzemach Tzedek, that it's a school to Meshadech with his Einikel. So
it's actually on Rav Menashe Elier's Wikipedia page.
Yeah, but I was tried to be Mavar from a few Lubavitcher people. They never heard of this thing. So it's a little unclear where we got from. One of the Makar, so he has a Sefer Alpha Menashe. There's a few other Makaris to bring from. There's one interesting one. There was a Maskell who wrote a very, very, I think it's called Ben Pyrus or something. He was the Matargim at the end of the Shas. He was very not good. So he wrote a book on Ramesh earlier. So I went to the book and actually I was able to find something Al Hatorah for there. Actually, when he does
everyone agree with the authenticity of that book?
No, absolutely not. But that's the stuff that he has Negias for. But I don't think he would make up a random Torah. I mean, maybe he would, but I write over there that he wasn't the most. He actually writes it himself. His name was Mordechai. So he writes when he went to the main Bais Medrash in Vilna, or one of the Beit Midrashim in Vilna for Megillah reading, or maybe not for Megillah. When he walked in, the Ilm was saying that they should bang Mordechai together with Haman. So he's one of the interesting Achronim. We also have him I never heard of before. We have Reb Chaim Philip Fuber. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. He was very interesting. There's very little known about him. There's a tshuva in Reb Akiva Eger. It doesn't say to, it just says the Chacham Echad. He blasts the Chacham for going against the Gedalim and doing kulas. So we were able to figure out this was him, and I managed to get some historical content. A lot of searching had to go into that. Just a lot of the Litvish Gedalim who don't have so much. The Minska Gadol, the Zalman Sender, Chaim Berlin, the Dvaz, all those Mata Pakamansky, David Karliner. We have Edim, Reb Aaron, very nice chat from Aaron Sidarsky. He was Ziva Grishim. He was Edim by Reb Sol Salanter. Beautiful chat. So a lot of such chatim from Gedei Lilita.
So, and like I said, we went to Rosh Shiva. So I'm curious. First of all, one more thing before I get to this question. What about live people? I know I saw you quote your father sometimes, as you mentioned your father all in the beginning of this. Is there other people alive today that you and Rav Yeshua we mentioned? But what about any other people that are alive today that you quote?
So actually, my father, I don't think I mentioned solo. I think I only mentioned when he's bringing something.
Oh, okay, so maybe fine, but you write Mipi Amr Shlita. So okay, fine,
Yeah.
but you quote it b'shem your father. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So we have. So when we published it, he was alive. Shlomo Fisher Zitzal. So him we bring from a few times. I think we bring from Beli Bar a few times also. Beli Bar Achtlegel. I just want to mention before with the Rishonim, so people might think that we just that we did whoever lived from year 1000 till the times of the Seisif was we bring. We don't bring everyone. First of all, the people that are slightly controversial we mention, but the people who are totally, such as you mentioned Sarah Fisher. Sarah Fisher has a letter about Ibn Kaspi about how terrible he was. So that would be major. I could bring him on every page. He has so many very interesting things. So there we don't. Another person I did not bring yet, maybe next Sefer we'll have, was Rav Ram Abulfia. We did not bring.
The Rashba, Mashiach.
The Rashba, yeah.
Now that I'm running my Shabtai Tzvi series, is people I guess are interested in the false Mashiachim, but yeah.
Yeah, so things have changed since then. I heard B'Shem B'Shemai Morgenstern who said that just the Rashba, it was just a matter of time. It wasn't this time for. By the time of the Rashba, it wasn't his time to be the Skala yet. So maybe now it's his time to be the Skala. So maybe next time we'll
right.
Get him.
Okay. It's worth mentioning for sure. Now, something else I want to talk about. This is what I was going to ask before about Haskamas. You have a couple of Haskamas over here. So two questions. First, do you want to talk about the Haskamas, and also, did the Maskimim know that A, the sources that you quote, B, that even some of the Svarim that you quote, like you mentioned, a lot very interesting things that you're quoting, some very interesting, unique, let's call them Chidush Torah.
So it depends on the Maskim. Some of them, let's say your Shmuel Deitch, I don't know how I gave it to him, and he's the Rav of Eitzar Chachma, so he definitely sounds like he enjoyed it. I'll tell you a little secret. B'zam Lechem is Zatzal. His Haskama is worth absolutely nothing. He didn't even look at it. He just asked me a few questions. And I went to him in downtown in the Encyclopedia Talmud office, and that was it. I ate by him once, Salzbacher, but I don't think he remembered me.
Reb Shmuel Deutsch, may I ask a question? Reb Shmuel Deutsch, he looked through the Sefer and didn't make any comments?
He didn't make any comments. He just said it was very nice.
I mean, he's a brilliant man. He definitely, and what we get over a few hours, he gets a few minutes. He must have gotten exactly what it's all about.
Yeah. I don't think he had such hard. Again, it was a lot smaller than the dates that was a while ago, but I'm saying it did have, to a lesser extent, it had all those people. I would just want to mention, people ask me why I don't have anyone from America. And not only that, I don't know if Shimon, if you remember, as a Sefer was being made, I actually made a little kuntrus. My parents had their 50th anniversary. So we made a little thing. Everyone in the family put in a shtukot Torah, whatever, something like that. So then I actually got askamas from Matasio or Mokiel, but very nice askama from Matasio. But we didn't. I didn't want the askamas saying, and I know your father for the last 50 years. I wanted to see what we could do on new terrain, new ground, without any schasavas.
So let me ask you. So you mentioned a lot of examples. I mean, if you want to throw in another example, but I think we really covered a lot of the examples what you do, and like you said, the things that are like kishmaga pshat in the pasuk, it's not something that you're really gonna mention here. I don't think, if you want to mention, but if you want to mention any other examples, you can. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you, as future projects, are you working on any other? Is there a likaton? Are you working on a new edition of this? Are you working on another? I know Shalom Rav did like Shalom Rav, the Shalom Yech, so you just did a completely new like Likut Sefer, I guess, instead of a new edition, something like that. Or are you going to do something on Nach, on something else? What are you working on? Are you working on something else now?
So it's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm still deciding. I had a lot of material that I was not able to put in due to space constraints. I would want to put in a lot more, and I got a lot of information since then. There's different ideas. Either do another one on Torah. Some people are saying should do more on Mayadim and Nisuin. Suggestions will be welcome. Just to mention, we only mentioned Likut Sefer. I'd just like to mention some of we do have Chassidische Gedalim. We have a lot from Menachem Zemba, Nikol Chemda, Nikol Klaver, and Meir Shapiro, the rugged shaver. From his Adam also. I don't think there's a chassid. We have Shabina Rav, his father and his brother, Gedali Eilam. Rebbes, we have a lot from the Ger Rebbes from a lot of places, including those that are not printed. There's some from the Beis Yisrael that weren't published. There's the stuff from Tolna that weren't published. There's also I try to get, like, if someone says the opposite of what he's supposed to say, like let's say we have from Shlomo Zviller, who you expect like a real, like Heilige Torah. He says a very nice Torah of why things go back after Yevel, after 50 years, like a cheshbon in the person's life, they should respond, like things like that when it's the opposite. We have a lot from the Kutzker. How many of them are really from the Kutzker? I have no idea. I actually once saw an article, maybe in Tarbitz it was, this guy went through all the places where it's with the real Mamarim from the Kutzker.
Yeah, he had the same luck as Churchill had. Most things that are attributed to him, he never said.
We have from the Garlitzer, very nice Shafar stuff. That's a favorite. We have a lot from Chabad. We have from Baal Tanya, the Tzemach Tzedek. I found a few things in an old journal from the Tzemach Tzedek. They looked a little fishy. I actually sent it to Nachum Greenwald from Lakewood. He's the big expert on Chabad Svarim. He told me, he also sent me some Makom that's probably not true, but so I put that in the end. We even bring one piece from the last Rebbe, not by name, but by name of Sefer. In case you're thinking it's getting a little too Hasidish, you can't forget that we also brought from, as far as I know, I'm the only Mechaber in history to bring a piece from Rav Vigdor, the Rav of Pinsk, the Misnagid, taken from the letter actually that he wrote against Baal Tanya. It's printed by Dod Tzvi in Bias Baal Tanya in Nedeirei. So we have that also. It's nothing special of content, just the name is.
So basically, I think what's coming out of the whole, like I said, the whole episode so far is that really it's a unique Sefer Al Hatorah. If someone's looking for something different, something unique, and I've heard this, by the way, I should tell you, Barry, that I've heard from friends that they really enjoy the Sefer. It's something that they picked up and really enjoy, something new and unique and interesting Torah. It's not, like I said, it's not your classic. Again, it's not Ocher Place of Torah. So if people, it's not that. That's not what you were trying to do. That's a different, unique Sefer. But it's not like, the standard Likut Sefer are very nice, but this is not that. This is different sources, different things, interesting things. And so it's interesting. It's 2 volumes. They're pretty big. And I think last I saw like $40 or something around. So fairly priced for 2 big volumes. And this is people can find it in the farm stores, in local farm stores. I think it is available now. I remember it wasn't, but now it should be back available. And I'll try to find a link online, put a link in the show's notes so people can order it and find somewhere to order it. Now I want to flip over to Reb Shimon here, and ask you about follow up a little bit to Shimon about Machon Aleh Zayis. What have you been doing recently? I know last time we had you on with Rabbi Javel Machon Mechichtana, you talked a little bit about Yisfarim. So what about what's Aleh Zayis? They work. Anything you could say that you recently publishing, working on, interesting now? Anything you can tell the listeners?
So first of all, thank you again. I would say that last time we spoke about 2 Sfarim that are in the works that I usually refrain from mentioning things before they came out. But at this point, they're already out, so I would just mention them again. I would say two of the most important Svarim I ever was involved in publishing. One of them is the Tshuvas Beis Yankiv. He was a contemporary of the Shach. He knew the Shach personally, and it's a sefer that's cited by many achronim. A younger man, Reb Lipa Ostreicher from London, he worked on it. He did the job of an entire mechain all on his own. And it just got printed. It will be available by the time that your listeners hear this podcast. I assume the sefer will be already available. A very, very important sefer. A sefer that's not been in print. Recently, somebody just, he typed it up and printed it, but real work has not been done on it and has been out of print for many, many, many years. Everybody quotes him from the Gedolei Achroinim. This Hagois Rabbi Akiva Eiger printed on it that was never printed before. And some other on the sefer that have never been printed before. And he did a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful job. And we did a wonderful job as well. That's an amazing sefer. Another very, very important sefer I also mentioned last time, but now it's actually available in the stores at the time of the recording, and I might be sold out by the time the podcast hits the air, is the Magen Avos from Ramat Chabanet. Ramat Chabanet was, Kiyadua, one of the greatest Achroinim. Some Sefer considered him one of the greatest Achronim in his times, and he's unquestionably one of the greatest Achronim. And he has a Sefer Magen Avos, a very important Sefer on Shabbos, yet not learned enough because of how difficult the Sefer is to learn. And a very Chashav Talmid Chacham from Muncie, Rav David Tzvi Kagan, he worked over the whole entire Sefer. We worked on it as well. And it's available right now. Also, an amazing job. And it's a Sefer HaChasam that's been opened up now that you can really learn and gain a lot from it. Those are 2 very important Svarim. 2 other Svarim, I believe one of them you might have had recently on a podcast. One of them is Chol of Treifa, interesting Sefer. Yungaman put out about the Shaila of the Treifa cows to get the shots. He speaks about it's mostly relevant to people who are makel in the Shaila of Chol of companies, but there are people who are makel in that. And he did, although I'm named after the cross the Rav Hill Lichtenstein, who fought very strongly against Chol Vacuum of Chol companies. But there are people, can't deny, there are people who follow the psak of other Rabbanim, most notably Rav Moshe Feinstein, and they do drink and eat Chol of companies. Maybe they live very far away from any Chol of Yisrael, and for them it's the Gay of the Shaila. He's did a wonderful, wonderful job. Very interesting topic, interesting sefer. Another important sefer I'd mention is Iye Hayam. Now, I don't want to, make anyone feel bad. I'm not mentioning every sefer. I'm just trying to mention Svarim that could be more of general interest, and that the ones that come to mind. I might leave out some very important things. But Iya Hayam, a very nice sefer. It was written by a Chashav Yid in Lakewood. His name is Ravam David. He put out a sefer he did already on Shmuel Alpha and Shmuel Beis, and now he came out of Malachim Alpha and Malachim Beis. It's a wonderful, I would call it a Shita Mukubetzes on Navi. Anybody who learns Navi should get it. It's an amazing, amazing sefer. He goes through the pshat and he brings from all mefarshim, very broad range of mefarshim, and he gives you the real pshat in the psukim. And it's not just He doesn't just look at the trees. He gives you the whole forest, and then there's a sugya. He goes through the sugya that's relevant to the Navi. It's an amazing, amazing, useful sefer. Anyone learning Navi should have it next to them. I think it's a very important sefer. Iyayam on Melachim. An interesting book that's about to hit the shelves, and maybe again we'll have already hit the shelves by the time this recording is listened to everyone, is a biography about the very important, very chashuv Rosh Yeshiva. It's called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Recently was Nifter of Siratskin from Springfield Yeshiva. A Talmud of his wrote a very heartfelt memoirs about him, very in English, very, very interesting. Different kind of sefer that I usually put out, but the Talmud's name is Aryeh Leibish, very, very interesting author, and he put out a very, very, very nice book. It's about the Amelus B'Torah, which Rav Siratskin was exemplified. Very interesting sefer. I'm forgetting. There's another interesting sefer about to hit the shelves. Again, it might have already hit the shelves now. Is two more svarim I mentioned. One of them is Hilchos L'Mashiach. Hilchos L'Mashiach. There's a Chashvi Gaman Rabbi Alon in Lakewood that he's waiting impatiently for Mashiach's arrival, and he wrote an Arachayim, basically, meaning the halachas that pertain to day-to-day life for people when Mashiach will be here. So, for example, someone's washing their hands over the sink, and his hands are shniyos, and the water drips onto kalim, which I meant. I'm sorry about that. And sorry about that. It drips onto kalim that are meant to be used for truma. What is the halacha? And we'll go through the halacha. Many, many other halachas like that pertain to Moshe Mashiach. It's written in a vivid halacha el-ma'aseh big way. We have a picture of the Beis Mikdash Ashlishi on the cover, so that's a very interesting kind of sefer that somebody's working on. Another important sefer, we spoke with the Kamenetskis at length. Rabbi Yankov had a son, Rabbi Yamin Kamenetsky, actually his oldest son. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the past, this project or not. And there's basically his grandson, his name is in Vermont, his name is Shmuel Kamenetsky, a friend of mine. He approached me with pretty much what looked like a suitcase full of scrap papers. Rabbi Yamin, who was an excellent speaker, and he's unique because although he was the son of Rabbi Yankov, he married the Chassidish family, the Oster Kalashina Chassidus, and he had a Chassidish heart in a certain way, Rabbi Yamin. So he has the Rabbi Yankov's son. On the other hand, he's a bit of a Chassidish neshama, and he was a great speaker, and he was known for what he taught from the 5 towns in the Long Island. He's basically spread a lot of Torah. He's you could consider him one of the great pioneers of Torah in America regarding the Long Island. And but when he spoke, he would just jot down on a piece of paper, basically story with a sfas emes, a pasuk, a vort for my father, and pretty much very cryptic notes. And it took us years to decipher those notes and develop a understanding of what he's referring to. And we were able to reconstruct also a 2-volume beautiful sefer for Rabbi Yamin Kamenetsky, very engaging stuff, more just to contrast it to Arzei HaLevanon. And Arzei HaLevanon is for the scholars and not for the faint-hearted. The Chelkas Binyamin for Rabbi Yamin Kamenetsky is more the feel-good kind of stuff, and very, very inspiring, and coming from a real inspirational person. A very unique sefer, the Chelkas Binyamin, that's about to come out. And that's not to minimize the other svarim that are constantly coming out. I'm just looking over the list of some things that are in print right now. There's a chashuv sefer. I would mention Birchas Yecheskel, just not to ignore the svarim that come from a lot of Amelus B'Torah. There's a sefer Birchas Yecheskel by Reb Cheskel Kaminsky. Reb Sacha Kaminsky, his father, Reb Cheskel Kaminsky. He puts out wonderful, beautiful chaburis. I'll say there how Parshias. I'll give you full disclosure. Recently, somebody asked me for a pshetel, and I was a bit in a rush, couldn't think on my own. I just whipped out that sefer and wrote over a pshetel straight out of that sefer. It's a great resource for good lumdus. In the end, I was kind of with the Shini Hashem and the Shini Maisa, but people are interested in good, clear lumdus and wonderfully composed chaburas al Torah. I would say the Birchas Yecheskel we already published. Bereshis and Shmois Vayikra is going to hit the shelf about Vayikra time. I know that will coincide with our airing or not. And there are many svarim. Someone's putting out a sefer on Parshas Tetzaveh, Big Kahuna. It's actually a reprint. It's already been issued before. A lot of svarim, but that's just some of the stuff that's coming out. But I would like to mention one thing that I think Rav Nachi I'm going to catch you off guard on this one. is an interesting thing, and maybe your readers can even participate in this one. Not your readers, your listeners can participate in this one. I had an idea recently of doing, I have, Baruch Hashem, quite a few editors who do work for me. So I don't like to impose on people to do work for free, but some people want to. So I suggested to all the editors that are working from HaLevanon Al Zayis, if they'd want to participate in the following project, we'll take a Tshuva Sefer. We chose the Sefer Galia Masechtas from David Devardika. Our Litvak over here of Aryeh will enjoy the choice. And it was a colleague of Chaim Volozhiner. Every yeshiva man knows the 2-3 important things that he did. The Hesper of Chaim Volozhin and the Shiklan Chanukah and a few other important pieces. But the Galia Masechta is actually a very important Sefer, Tshuva Sefer. I have a special chavivus because my bar mitzvah shet was actually the Galia Masechta on Chanukah was the bar mitzvah shet my father prepared for me. So I have a chavivus for the Sefer, and it hasn't been redone in a long time. You can't even. Is it available in the stores now?
Yeah, it was just reprinted, but in that same photocopy, photo also you call it now. It's not. It's very hard to read.
So there's two parts of the Sefer. There's the chuvas and the drushes. We're starting with chuvas. There's about 50 chuvas. I counted 50 chuvas. I sent it out to all the editors. They should be working on it pro bono. 30 chuvas have been taken already. So we have about 19, 20 chuvas left. Yeah, I'm thinking of one way or the other, going out to the general public and saying, if anybody person feels capable of it and wants to participate in a project like that, take upon themselves a tshuva, and they'll have to follow the guidelines of how to work on the tshuva. They'll have to be capable of doing it. And if every person takes the tshuva, we could, for minimal cost, we could basically reissue the Tshuva's Galia Masechta in a very chashuv way. I think this would be a wonderful project and a great addition to the Torah world.
I'm just curious, what you're doing it like big aris or like just remember like what type of
Everybody, if you want to participate, you can say
no. I'm just simply curious.
I'm not going to fasten the guidelines exactly, but there will be very specific guidelines on what work has to be done for the Tshuvas. And I hope that it could be a very successful thing, and maybe we'll do another one if we were successful in this one.
Reb Shimon, I think he just wanted to be, you were the interviewer before. I think he wanted to be the interviewer of you over here. That's all he was trying to ask you over there.
I'm sorry, Nachi. You expected a lot of me just to say hello to me at the beginning and be quiet until the end.
No, you interjected throughout. So first of all, I want to mention a couple of things. Of course, everybody, I'm sure listeners will understand there's many more Sfarim that you haven't mentioned. That doesn't mean that you have a lot of Sfarim and people know about. They know about the Gillian that we discussed on the last episode with Rabbi Dravel and the Mechiktana, that they can email you to get the Gillian. Also, you mentioned Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky, who's publishing the Sefer of his grandfather, Rabbi Kamenetsky. So listeners should stay tuned for a podcast episode on that Sefer. And then the other Sfarim, I don't know. Maybe there will be episodes.
Are you doing exclusively my Sfarim these days? Are you interviewing just my Sfarim exclusively?
Not specifically. I should say this right now. Why not? Anyone who writes a Sefer, it has to be interesting enough, I guess, for the listeners. But I mean, in general, if anyone writes a Sefer, I'm happy to I'm not promising, but I'm happy to interview people about a Sefer. Just, I don't know, sometimes for Mechaber Sfarim, it seems to be hard to get them to come on a podcast, whatever reason, various reasons. And so I'm happy to do it. I've gotten good feedback and people seem to be interested in listening to Sfarim. For the listeners out there, if you enjoy listening to episodes on Sfarim, obviously some more than others, depending on the Sefer style, content, topic, genre, etc. But if you're interested in more Sfarim-centric, you can email me and let me know. But the feedback that I've gotten is that people have generally enjoyed these, mixed in with my history and academic and all the other episodes together as a nice blend. People seem to enjoy it. So to answer your question, Reb Shimon, a long-winded answer, I don't think it's specifically Machon Aleh Zayis, although you're doing nice work and people seem to enjoy that, but it's not specifically Dafka Machon Aleh Zayis.
Am I allowed to you said I'm the interviewer also, so can I just interview Aryeh with one more question?
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask Aryeh, how does a good Lakewood boy like himself come across all these esoteric topics and academic sources?
Zu Shaila Shein La Tshuva.
I think that's a good way to end the episode. So again, like I said, it's available in Sefer stores, Arzei HaLevanon. Everyone can check it out. I'll find the link to put in the show's notes that people can be able to order it online. And with that,
for a little cheaper by my parents' house at 245 Courtney Road in Lakewood, across from Miss Vega.
Okay, so how can people can they call? Can they email? Should they email you? I'll put your email address. How do you want people to do that?
So either they could email or they could call 732-600-6338.
Okay, so if they're in Lakewood, but they have to pick it up. So I'll put the phone number for that in the show's notes as well. And I'll put your email, and I guess I'll find a link somewhere. A lot of people want to order it, and it's available in the Svarim stores. 2-volume, comes in a slipcase. People can just purchase it.
And Amir Hashem, as Hashem Yisparach, if everything works out, we are headed for printing number 2. As Hashem Yisparach.
Okay, so thank you, Aryeh, for joining me, and thank you, Reb Shimon, for joining me once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much for having me.